Great. Thank you, Tracy. Good evening. I'd like to call the Tuesday, January 19th, 2021 Board of Finance meeting to order. First item on the agenda tonight, public forum. Anybody wishing to address the board in public forum? I don't see anybody at this particular moment, so we will move on. Item number 2, approve minutes of the regular meeting minutes of December 21st, 2020. Do I hear a motion to approve those?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, and comments or corrections? I have a few to throw out there. On page 1, second paragraph from the bottom, second line, the timeliness of tax payments, and if there was any indication on chances of catching up and by when. Under number 3, correspondence, standing building. Third paragraph, Mr. Ailes, in between there it should say, Mr. Ailes stated that the Lakes project, the Lakes was, hold on. No, I'm confused. Mr. Ailes stated that the Lakes project was supposed to go to bonding. On page, sorry, page 4, under item number 4, first paragraph, the expenditures for the month just needs to have a comma between the 8 and the 4, just for clarification purposes. A very common misspelling in the 4th paragraph down on Mr. Ailes. Acceptable, but should be corrected. I'm used to it. And on page 8, the large paragraph under old business, 4th line, I believe it should say the original request totaled 1.7 million, period. And then it just goes into preliminary numbers all around. So just 1.7 million with a period. I have nothing else. Anybody else have any corrections?
On 4, I think I made a comment about the meal program. And the second sentence, I thought I said, even though we have tough times, as even though they have tough times. I just thought I phrased it as we. And okay. Then it was near the bottom. I think I said quite a mouthful about the right to vote, but I can't remember everything I said. But it seemed like it was just one sentence, didn't do it justice. Still a big believer in the voting thing.
I think we all are, Jonathan.
Yeah, I do think that it captured what the point was. I think sometimes just because it's one sentence doesn't mean that it has to be a long paragraph. But I did read that and made it to me, it made it very clear your opinion on that. So I had no problem with it.
We might have to go to the replay on that one.
Might have to go to the what? I'm sorry.
I'm kidding. I'm saying we need to go to the replay.
I think we're okay. Anything else on corrections?
On page 5.
Yes, go ahead.
About the middle of the page, the paragraph that is in between the one that starts Mr. Gammerman and Mr. Ailes, where it says Ms. Trudeau explained that it is not COVID related. That last sentence, they just did a big order to get some. I think the word of should be taken out just to get some regular cleaning supplies.
Okay. Any other items? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? We're all there, so I think we're okay.
Said aye, but I said on mute. Sorry about that.
Gotcha. Item number 3, correspondence. Number 1, standing building committee minutes. Standing building. Mr. DeMayo, Chairman of the Standing Building Committee, thank you for joining us again. Very much appreciated as always.
Pleasure.
I didn't have too many questions. In fact, I had two questions. One near the beginning that you might be able to inform us on. It's under 4.5 on the review cost proposal for the 4-bay vehicle storage. Just curious, there was an estimate for the cost of the AE services and a construction cost for the facility provided. And the AE services was Noise Vote Architects, and the construction cost was Munger. I understand that these were just to provide a level of just the general cost for both of those. I was wondering, based on the fact that there was a comment here that said that the chief was given a list of the on-call architects to obtain additional quotes. I'm just wondering why the quotes weren't solicited from the on-call architects that we have originally, and how Noise Vote, who is not an on-call architect that I know of, maybe they are, I don't recall, why they were solicited for that. Or was that something that was done by the police and fire headquarters kind of rogue?
Oh, yes,
The last comment? Okay.
Yeah, they went out on their own, and I'm not sure how they hooked up with Noise Vote, but we have a strong relationship with Noise Vote. And when Tom Gribben got the call, he reached out to my office. This goes back, I guess, in November, December, and said, "Hey, I've got this project, and we just did a order of magnitude budget so he can complete his response to the chief. And when they came to us last month, we directed them to the on-call architects, it'll go through the normal channels of public bid when the design process is complete. So we directed them to the on-call architects as well as to Summerhill Civil Engineering, who is also an on-call civil engineering for the town, and get quotes for that, which they'll bring back to us for approval.
That's great. Okay, that makes sense now that I heard that.
I did offer the chief to continue in a, off to the side, a consultation role just to help them as they start to develop the design. But it wouldn't be my intentions to bid the project, obviously, because of a conflict of interest.
No, I was not concerned about that at all. I know that, listen, there's expertise on the Standing Building Committee for a reason. And if that can be offered, for preliminary numbers, I don't see any issues with that.
Yep. Okay.
The only other item was 17.1, and I'm wondering if you could explain or provide a little bit more detail on the recommendations that were asked to be implemented, and our town attorney said he advised that the recommended language is not part of the standard town contract for bid documents. Just curious, is that putting an end to the recommendations, or what's the actual detail behind that? And
that's actually a typo. I didn't pick that up until tonight when I printed out the draft minutes again to prepare for this meeting.
Okay.
That should be should be now. The recommendations.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll get that corrected in the final minutes. But
okay.
My discussions with Mr. Barrett is that standard language is in the bid documents going forward.
Well, that's a great change then, because the recommended language is in there now. Okay, great.
Yeah. And I'll get that corrected.
Thank you. Thank you. That's it. That's all I had for Standing Building. Anybody else on the board?
I had one question.
And go ahead.
On item 5, David, on the Cox project, you noted, or the minutes note, that a portion of the funding is currently secured and the balance would be included in the proposed bonding. My question is, how much has been secured and what are we looking for in the bonding on this project?
All right. Hold on, let me read number 5 again here, please.
It would be the last sentence in number 5.
I'm not exactly sure, as he's reading that, I'm not exactly sure what the previous amount was, but the bonded amount is what we just heard from the bond request from the Board of Education for the Cox School HVAC. That was, and I'm sorry, I put my binder off to the side, so I don't remember what that was. I think it was 2.1? No, 2.8. 2.1 was the Fields. 2.8 is the Cox HVAC, I believe. Am I right on that?
Cox is,
It's Guilford Lakes HVAC is 2.8, almost 2.9. Cox
my goodness.
boiler is 414,000.
Hold on. Okay. So is the HVAC up?
Upgrades at Guilford Lakes.
Oh, I'm totally sorry. I apologize. I'm totally messed up on my schools here. Too long a day. Okay, I'm going to be quiet. David, what do you got? What do you have for us?
And I'm going to be honest, I can't answer that question.
Okay.
I don't
Okay,
recall how
Mary, that's okay. Mary Jane looks like she's got her hand up. She's ready to go. Go ahead, Mary Jane.
Thank you.
So we currently have bonded for, we're talking the Cox HVAC upgrade.
Yeah.
That's-
Okay. So currently we have bonded almost $1.2 million, and almost all of it is still available. And that was a 1920 bond authorization.
So what would, there was no balance in the upcoming bond request for this, or is that because it's adding the boiler?
It also may be because they might have some, it might be encumbered and I just don't have the expenditure yet.
Okay. I mean, HVAC boilers are part of HVAC, so it's
Well,
likely that could be the case, but I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
well, I can
I'm-
clear.
Yeah, I
Go
was
ahead.
just reading the capital reports that you have in your packets today.
Okay.
There was
Thank you.
discussion, folks, that, again, Michael's correct. The boilers are part of HVAC, but when this project was originally being designed, the plan was to upgrade the air side only. And they did Silver Petroselli did bring to our attention that the boilers are coming of age and they've been a little weak and require a lot of maintenance. So the suggestion was, let's incorporate a boiler into this program for both Guilford Lakes and Cox. So we are going to suggest that the boilers be changed as part of this, so we have a complete system. That could be the difference, but I can confirm that with Cliff tomorrow, and then send an email out to Michael.
That would be great, because now you just said that Lakes also may have a boiler replacement.
I believe that was the case. Yes, we were going to look at both of those.
Yeah, Cox is in the bonding request, or is intended to be in the bonding request for the upcoming referendum, but nothing on Lakes. So I'm just curious if Lakes can wait. It may be very well that Cox needs to be replaced immediately, but Lakes could maybe wait another year or two, and that'll be in next year's, which that's likely, but
I'll clarify that for you folks.
Well, Michael, they did report today a $2.9 million bond authorization for HVAC at Lakes.
okay.
That was one of the items reported by the Board of Ed today. The one that was carried over, held off from last year. So
Okay.
that $2.9 million may already include the boiler.
I'm looking.
Which actually that, now that you mention it, the Board of Ed and, anybody on the Board of Ed who's not this call could confirm, that they did say that the Lakes project did go up in number from last year because there was scope that was added. That would make sense. It's consistent to what the Board of Education said in our meeting on just before this one. Linda, did you want to confirm?
Right. That's right. It is Lakes added boilers and the cooling towers to the project that was proposed last year.
Okay, that's all consistent. That all makes sense. It's just the fact that the Cox project is separated because of the need of the boiler later on. Lakes is going to put it all in one request. Okay. That was a very good question. That
Yep.
worked that one out.
I've got a question about Section 8.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, this is about the performance contracting. And I just, I read this last paragraph, and it seemed to imply that the work wouldn't be done underneath the scope of the performance contracting, but instead would be in the equipment replacement project. And David, I don't know if you have some more detail about that, or maybe just here with this group, if there's some more detail about that.
I'll be honest with you, I don't have any more detail. My recollection is that the performance contract was closed except for whatever issues are going on between JCI and the town, and that the money had to be moved to some other venue in order to take advantage of it. And I can clarify that. I think I may have to go to Matt for that, which I'm happy to do.
Okay, Mary Jane, do you know a little more detail? Okay.
Yeah, maybe it's something that we could ask. We could ask Matt under old business or something. He'll be on the call eventually. You could ask him. Just put it off to the side.
No, appreciate the information you got, David. I just was curious why that changed.
It's been quite, as you know, kind of tangled web of issues. The performance.
Yeah, performance contracting is a tangled web.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Anything else on anything else for David in the standing building?
I had one question on item 11 on the elevator upgrade. Is a 30% contingency standard in the industry, or I mean, I noticed that we moved the contingency, cut the contingency in half to 15%. That seems like a reasonable contingency on many projects, but 30% seems excessive. How do we start out with 30% to begin with?
Well, I believe because there wasn't any preliminary information available to the committee in terms of any maybe environmental concerns with a leaky piston, which is pretty normal for an elevator that age. And if we could even get an elevator to fit in the existing shaft, and this was very early on in the request for funding. So that's why the contingency was set at where it was. We'd much rather be able to come back to you folks and come up with than have to ask for more money. So it was in our position, it was a responsible thing to do with such little information. Now that we're down the road with site investigations and testing, and we have an elevator selected that could fit in the shaft, so there's very little, if any, shaft modifications. We felt very comfortable moving the contingency down to 15%.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's about a $60,000 reduction, which is a good number.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else? All right. Mr. DeMeo, thank you very much. Appreciate it as always. Very helpful.
Good rest of the evening, folks. Thank you.
You too. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Item number 2, pension committee minutes. Anything for pension committee? Questions? I don't believe I had any.
I got a question about the pension committee meeting minutes.
Jonathan, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just noticed some conversation about the information that's given in these reports for retirees, and it almost seemed like they were asking if the information was accurate as to when somebody started and when somebody finished. I was trying to understand the logic behind the questioning to sort of verify. Oh, well, Mary Jane knows the real details, so it just raised some questions.
Mary Jane, you start and see if Bob needs to say anything. Go ahead.
I don't believe there's any question as to whether or not the information is accurate. The question arose as to what level of detail the pension committee should be knowledgeable about and approving. It was one member's idea that we have consultants and the town that has that information, and what we bring forward to the pension committee should just be, you know, what the final analysis is, and that they, you know, they really didn't see, you know, what my birthday was. They weren't going back to check what my birthday was. So the question was whether or not they should be approving that it was my birthday. I'm not probably not saying this the best way, but so what they decided to do is to review a pension request every month or so that they can go back and actually do that full review and double check every date and every dollar amount and make sure everything is correct. Not that anything is anticipated to be wrong, but just that they don't have that data in front of them. So when we bring it to them for approval, and they're approving the dates and the times, that the time periods that the people worked, you know, they don't have that at their fingertips. So the question was whether or not they should really be approving that, or if that should just be a function of the pension plan itself and the work that the town employees and the consultants do. So that was really the question. Bob, maybe you can be a little bit more eloquent than I can.
Oh, no, I'd be a lot less eloquent about it. It was, in my opinion, it was a member who said, listen, I don't know the person. I don't want to represent that I know the day they started and this and that. And of course, to me, it's, you know, you're a board, you're a commission, this all gets presented to you, and no board or committee or group makes a decision without it being based on the work of others. And this to me seemed like the same. This to me, the position seemed to me like a bus driver who would refuse passengers because he hadn't built the bus. And so I suggested that they just say, all right, well, you know, we'll move on this request as presented by others and sidestep the that issue. But you should see everything that when the money flows, you should see all the details in case something looks wrong and you want to look into, and you want to look into it. So they went the extra step. So they will audit one a month, and problem solved. But it was an interesting segue, in my opinion.
Okay, I usually put my birthday as 1995, so I hope I don't get audited.
We'll make
You were the
it.
first guy we're coming for, Jonathan. You were the first guy we're coming for.
Anything else on pension, the investment
I just
report?
have a quick question on that. So they referenced an updated investment policy statement, for lack of a better way to describe it, because it's not a charter, but it's like an updated roles and responsibilities. Would we get or could we get a copy of that too when they've updated it?
Yeah, I believe what Matt and our HR director, Mitch Goldblatt, are working on is rules and responsibilities for all of our committees. I think pension committee is where it's just starting because they have a lot of changes with the trust, the OPEB trust fund and all of that coming in. So we do have a draft of that that is on their agenda for 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, if you want to join us. And, you know, so certainly that can be forwarded to you if you'd like, but it's really a function of, you know, we've had a lot of new members to that committee. And so these questions, like whether or not they need to know the birthdays and stuff, you know, that kind of stuff is kind of coming out in the open because of all these new members. So we've drafted a rules and responsibility, you know, what their true responsibilities are. It really is almost, it's just a simplistic rewrite of the charter and that's already governing them. But certainly we can send that on. And I believe, although don't quote me, but I believe the goal is to eventually have that done for other boards and commissions as well for new members when they come in.
Thank you.
I got like one more about pension, and maybe this is like wishful thinking, but I see that the assumption rate is being considered to drop from 6.25% return to 6. I also see we kind of had a big bump in the pension fund, right? Was it $6 million or so additional value? Has that been considered? Is it possible the assumption rate could stay steady?
I'm gonna let Bob answer that better than I can.
I mean, I don't know. It would be timing, right? Did Pam consider bump?
You wouldn't make future policy based on 1 month. And it was a hell of a month. And with all the new, it's true that at the moment the markets are on fire because it's anticipating all this new stimulus money coming in. But there is very little faith among the committee and other professionals that this will stay going, 18 or 15% returns will go forever. That's market returns, not what a pension fund makes, because pension funds are more conservative because you're guarding the downside. So to protect the downside, and because nobody thinks that interest rates are going to move terribly high, terribly soon, it seemed the prudent thing to do. This committee should be aware that this will cost the taxpayers about $1/3 of a mil in additional contributions to the pension fund. And I'm going to make some proposals that we'll see, but this is not the moment. But that's that. You can't, it's a smoothing exercise, and we can't. Nobody can hang their hat on these markets continue at this rate for the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
I just like to add that, I just like to add that we do have numbers for other assumption rates so that, we could go somewhere in between. If the number that we need is too much to bring it all the way down to 6. So we do have other options that we can review with the Board of Finance and to mutually come in with the best recommendation we can. And I just like to also reiterate something that Bob said. When you see my report at the end of every month, it's a snapshot in time. You'll see that the increase in the funds is unrealized gains. Therefore, it's not really money in the bank unless we were to sell everything that particular day. And I'm not even sure if that's how it works. But so, when we see a $6 million gain today, tomorrow it could be 1. So it's, a snapshot in time.
And
I'd have to say that it's not sustainable. I don't think we can spend $3 trillion a month in stimulus.
Well, the other thing to throw in the mix here is that you're not just looking at the return of this fund, you're looking at the draw. And I've just had a brain slide on the name. Who are the people who determined the Mary Jane?
Milliman?
No. The function starts with an A.
Actuaries.
Anyway.
The actuaries.
Actuary. Thank you, Jeff. On an actuary, because Jonathan, because of the draw, even though we're doing really well, on an actuarial basis, we're not doing as brilliantly as you'd think. Sometimes some years we outrun, although it's a terrifically performing portfolio, sometimes with an aging group, and depends who leaves and under what circumstances, sometimes they take out more than we put in.
Jonathan, I think you're on mute.
Oh, I was thinking that I read there was some drawdowns this month that were significant. Maybe $1 million in drawdowns. So I see your point. I appreciate the answer, though. It was kind of a little bit of positive news, though, to see markets bounce.
Never hurts.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else on pension? Or else we will move down our agenda to number 4. Review and accept report of expenditures for the Board of Education for December 2020. We have Linda, of course. We have reviewer of the month, Mr. John Delaventura. And I see Dr. Bal Stracy joining us. and hanging out, just listening. So, or maybe contributing. We'll see. John,
Thank you, Mr. Ailes.
all yours.
Okay, so month of December, I had an opportunity to review ahead of our January 11th meeting the financial reports, just highlighting the summary page here for you all. The expenditures for the month of December were $5,899,764. Expenditures and encumbrances through the end of December were 47.19% of the budget as compared to 43.68% the prior year. Revenue for December 2020 was $1,009.25 from Medicaid. The month of December was a 3 payroll period month, so the percent of the budget expended is higher than the prior year. In terms of capital, the percent of the budget expended is higher than the previous year. This is due to the equipment instructional line over budget. It'll be reimbursed by the technology lease. We will be reimbursed for our purchases, and the amount will be within budget. In terms of our COVID line item, the first distribution for the coronavirus funds have been received. Additional funds have been requested and should be received in February. Our operating expenses, operating transfer, there was a transfer made to cover the expenses for the dining services program. The funds were not transferred in December, but $200,000 was transferred in January. As is typical, we did review the warrants for the month in our operations committee meeting, as well as our regular meeting. The warrants we're submitting as a total of all payments for the month listed alphabetically. The total payments are $1,729,723.09. Are there any questions?
I'd like to start with one. I'm going to start backwards on the COVID report. And again, I think I know the answer to this, but on the COVID total year-to-date revenue that we received, it says in total 435,819.92. But the total down below is 19,729. I think that says 60. Is that because the revenue, that 19,000 is not including what we've received in funding from either the state or the federal?
So the total just didn't carry down. Didn't catch that until afterwards that the total wasn't changed. So the 19,000 is all other sources of revenue for the board of, and it's just the formula error. I apologize. I didn't catch it till.
It's okay.
Afterwards.
I didn't know if there was a reasoning for it or if it was just a carry down Excel, or a software issue, which I do all the time. So
no, operator error.
Okay, not a problem. Not a problem. The two questions I had on purchase services were legal and dues and fees. Dues and fees were over. I guess I would ask number one on dues and fees, the reasoning for that, if it had anything to do with COVID or another reason. And is that amount, or is that percentage, because it's gone over, is that something that we need to or have looked to budget next year so we don't go over? And legal services, just wondering how that's trending, because we're at almost 100% on legal.
So that is actually for testing fees for the IB students. We will get those funds back, so that line will come back within budget. So that shouldn't be an issue, not something that we have to worry about for the budget for next year, not COVID related either.
Good.
Legal is trending high. We did have not only contracts to negotiate as well as MOUs for reopening of the school. We did 2 one-year extension negotiations with 2 unions. There has been a little bit of special education legal. It seems to have leveled off a little bit. I'm not seeing the really big bills that I did the beginning part of the year. We will be over budget by the end of the year for legal.
Okay.
And the proposed budget for next year for legal does not go up.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have two questions.
Go ahead, Ken.
Going back to where you started, Mike, on COVID. First off, how much more are we anticipating over the course of this year on COVID from the various sources? And are we eligible to get anything from FEMA?
Can we just kind of try to do a COVID reconciliation between, you know, what we spent and what we expect to get back from the different sources? Just a rough reconciliation? Is that possible?
So we are going to get right now approximately just under $600,000. Sorry, I lost my screen here. There it goes. So we have
We've applied for about 6, and we've gotten 435.
right. So
Okay.
we'll get the rest of the 6. We don't know what else is coming in this next round of
Right.
relief. There really isn't much that we've spent recently that we could submit to FEMA because FEMA is not covering PPE. They're saying that's more of an operational thing.
Right.
So looking at what we've spent and what I've already been able to apply to these other grants, I don't think there's going to be much for FEMA at this time for the Board of Ed.
What
Yeah,
about this grant for the 200,000 on, or this transfer for 200,000 for dining services? Where's that money going, and when can we see it move to that purpose?
So the $200,000 was transferred in November, and then we did another transfer in January to cover their operating expenses. So right now with the meals that they're serving free for all, we're getting reimbursement on them, but it does not fully cover the cost of the salaries and the food purchases.
Let's see.
There has not been anything that we found that would allow us to apply for any kind of grant or relief for the operating expenses of the dining services program. So because they're not taking in any revenue, they're not bringing in, they're only bringing in the small amount of reimbursement that we're getting for the meals, and it's not enough to cover. We have laid off staff, we've changed our food purchases, but it's not enough to cover. So to keep them operating, we had to do the transfers.
For clarification purposes, is it indicate, or where is that 200,000 coming from, or is that a TBD?
To be determined.
Because I remember last month there was a comment about it will come from different categories, but I didn't know if that had been determined yet. But that will be determined near the end of the year when there's under or over expenditures, and they'll be reallocated like it is every year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't identified any one source yet because we still have 5 months to go.
Right.
Well,
And again, if I may, just a reminder that this is being experienced by school
Everybody.
systems across the state. This
That's
is
my
not at
question.
all unique to Guilford.
Okay, that was my question.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we're,
Let me just kind of sum it up, though. From what I see, we have a shortfall because of COVID expenses of about 1.72 million. Sorry, 1.172. So how much money is in the pipeline to recover? Let's just call it 1.2 million.
we know we're getting 600,000. We don't know if anything's coming in this next round of funding.
So we already got 435,000, right? So we are
Right.
expecting another 600?
A total of
total.
600,000. So we have another 170,000 roughly.
Another 170,000. So we're still $1 million short, give or take. And we don't have any other funding sources that might offset that cost.
Not to that level.
No,
Might get
not to
some,
this.
but not that much more.
Okay, that's what I kind of wanted to drive at, where we're at.
Mhm. Okay. Anything else on the financials? Warrants? Packet? Anything? Going once? Twice?
Hold it.
Okay. I knew someone was going to speak up. Okay, Ken, take your time.
All right, well, while Ken's
I did hear
gathering his
first.
question,
Sure. Go ahead, Linda.
I apologize, I forgot to send you out the tuition report. I will send it out to you tomorrow, but I can tell you that it did not change much from what I had reported last month. We're still about $140,000 under budget, so it is still a little bit of good news.
Mhm.
We're hoping that that trend will stay, and so we'll have some funds to help offset some of the other areas that are over budget. And I will send out the report tomorrow.
Great. Thank you.
I had one comment, and I wish I would have looked at this before and addressed it to the superintendent. But in the Board of Ed meeting, perhaps you can help on this, Katie. The Board of Ed meeting on December 7, where Dr. Freeman made some comment on the assumption that the kids who participated in homeschooling this year will be returning to school next. Could you give us an update on that? Are we going to be coming back to more full attendance? Can we project that?
So I believe, Mr. Gamerman, I believe that comment was specifically about the number of students at Guilford Public Schools who withdrew full attendance this year and whose parents chose homeschooling for them. So that number was a little higher than is typical, and that Dr. Freeman is expecting that most of those students, though we don't know, right, that most of those students will likely return to Guilford Public Schools for their education following this year, because there's an assumption that they were homeschooling due to the pandemic.
So there's been no update on those assumptions.
There isn't, and you know, and we won't know until we hear from those families, and this is just a guess on my part, but I don't expect that will happen until later this year or over the summer.
Thank you.
As I was going through the packet, I just had a question on the mascot, the financial impact of that. We saw the budget number for next year, so it's being planned. Just wondering, is there an amount that the Board of Ed is looking at for this particular fiscal year on the mascot change, and where are those expenses coming out of, if there are any, in fact?
The Board of Ed has not been approached by Dr. Freeman or the administration to consider any particular amount related to those expenses. So hence the board has not discussed that. I don't know if Mrs. Trudeau can offer any information. I don't think that's necessarily an itemized item that has been expended at this point, but certainly I'll defer to her if I'm incorrect about that.
There hasn't been anything expended other than there were some t-shirts that were purchased to kind of help announce and start the whole process, but it was a very minimal expense, $5,000 maybe total. Nothing else has been expended, and nothing else has been submitted to me for purchase yet. So I don't anticipate anything this year. At least that I've heard.
And we do, we have been informed that the new logo that will be created is being done by a community member who is providing their time at no cost to the school system, providing their talents and their time.
Right. That was very much appreciated.
What's going to happen to the old equipment or shirts or jerseys or anything? Are they being sold, donated, or
Going on eBay.
I don't know the answer to that question, but we can certainly find out.
Thanks.
I was kind of curious about the mascot. Was that in relation to some of Guilford's history?
No, it was voted on by the students.
Oh, okay.
Come on, what, you haven't seen Grizzlies in Guilford?
No, I thought we bought Guilford from the Indians, the Native Americans in Guilford.
We did, 2 spoons and 12 English wampum.
I don't know the exact history. I just thought there was some history behind it.
Oh, there was.
The Grizzlies are transport for the mountain lions.
Okay. Anything else for the Board of Education? Okay, if not, then I will entertain a motion to accept the report. Sorry, there goes my screen. Motion to, let's try again. Entertain a motion to accept the report of expenditures of the Board of Education for the month of December 2020 in the amount of $5,899,764.08.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Recusals? Thank you all. Thank you, John, Linda.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it. Item number 5, review and approve report of expenditures for town government for December 2020. Mary Jane.
Okay,
We'll start with revenues, I assume.
yes.
Okay.
Start with revenues.
Okay.
You can see by our report that we are exactly where we were at this time last year with our revenues. Even though we have some of our departments that are underperforming and some that are overperforming, the bottom line is remaining the same. You'll see that a lot of our land use offices, their revenues are down. It's just a matter of work not getting done during COVID. So hopefully that'll start to pick up as things get better, as opposed to things like the golf course, which is over budget already. So we've kind of touched on all of these items other months, but if you have any other specific questions, I'll just note that the selectmen's revenue with the energy performance contract, the money has been transferred to the Board of Ed as of January. So you'll see that number come back down to where it belongs next month.
I have a question, Mary Jane. Would that transfer, which I guess would kind of put the money back towards where it belongs, right? Because the school has the lion's share of the energy savings and costs. But does that actually put us a little really behind on our revenue if you take that money out?
Actually, if you take out the amount that we gave to the Board of Education and rerun the numbers, you primarily are in the same place.
Okay, not really material, huh?
No, I checked on that as well.
Yeah, I see, 37,300,000. Okay.
And I'll just note, as far as that energy performance transfer, we received information from the utilities based on building by building. So the amount attributed to the Board of Ed buildings was all sent to them. It wasn't done by the percentage of our contract, which is 19 and 81. It was specific to every building. So the Board of Ed did receive the bulk of that.
Did it work out to just not all of it, or 90% of it?
Not all of it. The town received its share, but the bulk of it did go to the Board of Education because their buildings that, were energy
Yep.
used.
Anything else on revenue? We shall go to expenses then.
Okay, so at 50% through the year, we are about 53.6% expended, slightly higher than where we were last year. But as was noted on the Board of Ed side, for this half of the year, we actually have 27 pay periods as opposed to 26, because the first pay period in the new year would have been January 1st, and we paid out on December 31st. So if you go through the detail and see that some of the line items for salaries are slightly more than 50%, it's because of that one extra paycheck. There won't be any more paychecks than the 52 for the overall year, but we have 27 in the first half. There'll only be 25 in the second half of the year. So that kind of makes up the bulk of the difference between last year and this year, purely how the calendar fell this year.
Okay.
I don't really have anything other specific to say, unless you have any questions, but I did have one more thing on revenue. Remind me, I have to say afterwards. But if you have any questions on any of the expense lines.
I'm just curious, when we retire 105.8% of our principal, does that mean we're making payments ahead of schedule, or?
Last year at this time, we hadn't applied the premium credits from the fund balance. If you remember, for a few years, we had credits from our financing that we were applying against our payments to level out, to mitigate the increases. And we just hadn't moved that money in. So at the end of the year, it's 100%. But at this particular time last year, we were overexpended because we hadn't transferred those credits in.
Okay.
You want to?
I wanted to make one more comment on revenue. And the only thing, and I just wanted to note, because Matt's not here and I know he'd say it,
he just joined.
Oh,
so.
Okay. That the tax collections have been deferred. It was done very last minute, the last week of the year, but tax collections are deferred till April 1st. So we'll be closely watching how those affect our cash flow and how those come in. And Matt is coming in just at the right second, so he may or may not have anything to add to that, but we just want to let you know that you will see over the next 3 months the tax collections coming in because of the deferral that way.
Yeah, I believe that we were, that was indicated at our last meeting. We were told that that was going to happen. I believe it was like the next week or something like that, or next day. So, yeah, that's good.
Matt Trent. Matt, we're having trouble hearing you.
There we go. Is that better?
You got it.
My apologies. I've got a less than sufficient internet connection at home, but nonetheless, my apologies to the board for having missed the earlier portion of this meeting. I was on an emergency meeting of the board of directors for Tweedenhaven Airport. And Mary Jane, I just heard your piece, and Mike, your piece. Yes, we announced late to the public only because the governor announced it late in the calendar year on the deferral. So the numbers look very good right now in terms of tax receipts. But Mary Jane and I had a conversation earlier today. We're going to take a look at what has happened since the end of December to see whether or not there is much of a drag. But the good news is we caught up. We're basically at the same place we were last year after a 3-month deferral at the start of this tax year. So I am optimistic that tax revenues are going to come in at 100%, if not higher than that, at the end of the year.
Right. Thank you.
And as was done last time, the the bank payments will come in as expected in January. They do not take the deferral.
Right.
Mary Jane, do you know an estimate as to what percentage comes from the banks? I mean, there's a lot of single family houses in town with mortgages on them. I know that, so.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the amount was from July. I don't want to quote a wrong number, so I'll get back to you on that.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I was just, if you had an idea.
Actually, Mary Jane, I think we had a number between 15 and 18 million was the number we were talking about when we did the deferral the first time around.
Well, I was
Does
going
that
to say
sound- does that sound right?
going to say 18, so we're probably around the right things. So
Thank
I
you.
was just afraid to quote something I wasn't 100% sure of.
Okay. Anything else on expenses? Anything on the warrant? I don't think I had anything this particular month.
So a few very high ticket items. They must be for ongoing contracts, service contracts and the like. For example, on page 24, there's a $15,000 warrant for something called Zen City Tech, I think. The police have 15,005 on page 31. Page 35 is another one for almost $3 million. And I just, is this a time when things come due, like contracts and all? Service contracts and the like?
Well, Zen City is something new. That's a new initiative out of the Selectman's Office. I don't know if Matt wants to comment on what that entails. I'm just trying to find the other ones. You said page.
I'll be happy to on the Zen City. That is a software contract we entered into that gives us the ability to synthesize and pull together various social media interactions within the community relative to the where the community is focusing. It's a one-time effort to try to determine whether or not we can get more responsive to the community in terms of the issues that are commanding attention in social media senses.
What about that appropriation of $41,800 on page 7 on energy conservation to the Bank of America Public Capital?
That is the town's portion of the payment for the energy performance lease. It's payable every January.
This is an annual payment?
Yes.
Yes, we have to pay the energy performance contract was financed through a lease, and the lease payments are due January. So ours was just processed a little early.
See one on page 35. For Nature Corp of Connecticut. Boom Assay, I don't know what that would be. $21,800.
You say page 35?
Page 35, top.
It's 34 on the screen, Mary Jane.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I couldn't find it. Okay. Okay, 20.
Boom. For
Yeah,
Department of Works.
That's a piece of equipment repair. A new piece of it's an attachment to a piece of our equipment. A boom assembly. It's the arm. I believe that's the arm that goes on the mower.
You're right. It's over the rail. It's the over the rail arm that allows them to mow and cut brush along our roads.
or this thing.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't work in public works. I just know the money.
Anything else on warrants?
Special fund? Just
Sure.
because I
Go ahead, Jeff.
see, are we getting close to the end on the consent order? Is that the last payment?
Not quite the last. We still have one Army Corps of Engineer negotiation going on. That's the that will be the last piece. We're done with DEP, as I think we've talked about before.
Yep.
And the decision that we're awaiting right now is whether or not the expanded solution for mitigation that we came up with for DEP will satisfy the Army Corps of Engineers requirements for the, multiple sins or transgressions that were committed earlier. So we believe, early indications are that Army Corps of Engineers thinks that the expansion of that project, which is largely related to Chittenden area, will satisfy their concerns.
Great. And do they operate at their own pace, so we're at their mercy as to when we hear back from them?
Yeah, government operates slowly, and right now the Army Corps is operating even slower.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on warrants before we move to medical? Okay, medical. Fairly, it was a month that was right around where the budget is. And the ISL is growing a little bit and ramping up. So see, we're at 17% on the ISL percentage.
Are we
Other than that, not much more to report. Jeff, go ahead.
Are we anticipating anything else that might change these numbers? Something that hasn't shown up yet?
Really hard to say. Like I've mentioned, our consultants have not, they don't have a crystal ball to know what's coming up. It really is a matter of how many elective surgeries maybe have been held off that are still coming. Because like I've noted in the past, you go to the dentist, you go twice a year. If you didn't go last year, you're not going 4 times this year. So, preventative, things won't double up. You won't go to 2 physicals. You won't, do that type of thing. And a lot of that may or may not have been put off. So it's, hard to know, what things might still come into play. So we're going to make sure that we have enough contingency in here, even if we were to do something with some of the funding, but still too hard to say.
And we're not aware of any large claims that are in the pipeline or anything like that yet.
We are.
No, other than the ones that we've already established under catastrophic.
Right. Anything else in medical? Capital funds. Just on the school capital projects, just remind me again, the color coding, the blue and the brown.
Well, the one, when we come forward with our new capital projects, we'll also be closing out the items in brown.
The brown are the ones that you're looking to close.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought. I just want to make sure. I did review them. I didn't really have anything in particular questions. Did anybody else have anything on capital?
I was just curious, if we're ever under budget on a capital project, I know sometimes we'll transfer it to a similar project. Do we ever pull it back into our operating budget?
No.
No?
We cancel it. We cancel the appropriation. We don't actually borrow the money and throw it into fund reserve. We just don't go to the market and borrow the bond proceeds.
Okay, so we never
Right.
find ourselves in a situation where we borrowed it and we have it?
No.
No, we
No.
typically do not borrow in advance. We borrow to reimburse ourselves. So we're only borrowing for money that we need, not anticipated needs.
Okay, I was just curious.
Good question.
Okay.
For budget, sometimes, I would think, every once in a while.
I think having the authorization hanging out there for, 5, 8, 10 years even is not a good thing to do. So as a town, Mary Jane and has been working to close these authorizations so we don't have that hanging, I don't know if hanging out there is the right word, but that authorization, because I don't believe it to be a good thing.
Well, it doesn't,
Yeah, it makes sense to close them out, I would think too. I don't
Yeah.
know that much about it, but
Well, it's
does
like
it
a
affect
credit
it?
card. You say you have a $5,000 credit line and you only use 4,500. You have $500 in credit. Just having that hang over there for years and years and years for the town to use, I don't think makes good fiscal sense. And I think they need to be closed. Some of them were really, really old.
Yeah, we've already closed out the really, really old ones
Yeah, the really,
that
really
are
old
on the
stuff.
books. That was my number one goal.
Yeah.
So now this is the next step. And then once we're done with the Board of Ed, we'll start to look at on the town side. They're not as old on the town side, but there may be something we can do there too.
Yeah.
So I'd be
So
looking
we
to do
don't have
this
any
on a
need for-
regular basis.
don't have any need for horse and buggy anymore and call delivery and gotcha.
No, but I will make the caveat that there is one fund that we probably will not close until we expend all the money out of it, and that would be the land acquisition fund, the $5 million that we bonded
Oh, yeah.
back sometime when my kids were in grammar school, which was a $5 million bond authorization to purchase open space. We still have nearly $1 million in there, although based on some recent acquisitions, we'll probably start to draw down on that. But that would be the exception to the rule that Veronica and Mary Jane just espoused.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not on my list at all.
And that was made clear with the voters when we did that authorization, that would be almost like a reoccurring fund so that we had the funds available when these properties came up.
Correct.
Sorry, quick one, Matt, I can't remember.
Let
Mary Jane.
me try your minds on the board. Go ahead, Bob. Bob, go ahead.
Sorry, you're right.
Okay,
Okay, quick one. Which way did the money come from for the Route 80 property? Last I heard it was up.
Bob, we
for
haven't
discussion.
decided yet.
Okay, all right, thanks.
We've got either land acquisition fund, the bond fund, or the land acquisition special fund. So, and there are two properties that we're working with right now. One is Route 80, and the other is the Thane property over on Driveway. So we'll need to figure out how we balance those two.
Okay, I wasn't sure if reached a decision yet. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else for town? All right. If not, entertain a motion to approve the report of expenditures of the town for the month of December 2020 in the amount of $2,818,446.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
All right,
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions, or recusals? Okay. Moving on number 6. So item number 6 and item number 7 are both from the same memo. So item number 6 is I'll read the memo for the viewing audience. We all know what it says, but I'll read portions of it. So item number 6 is to set the interest rate for Guilford Supplementary Tax Relief Program, and 7 is going to be to set the cap for the aggregate benefit under Section E2 of the Elderly Tax Relief Program, which we do this every year. And so with that being said, to bring up the memo that went to us from Mary Jane. It's dated January 15th regarding both of these programs. And I will read this for the public very quickly. The Guilford Supplementary Tax Relief Plan requires that the Board of Finance set the interest rate annually for those deferring their taxes. It is my recommendation, that would be Mary Jane's, that the rate of 1.58% be used for fiscal year 2021-22. This rate represents the current 20-year spot yield for AAA rated general obligation municipal bonds as reported by Municipal Market Data, which is a subsidiary of Thomson Reuters. Additionally, pursuant to section 247-27A of the Elderly Tax Relief Program Ordinance, the aggregate benefit should not be set at less than 0.5% of the fiscal year 2020-21 total budget of $103,443,251 or $517,216. In order to avoid prorating the benefits of those approved for the program, the Board of Finance has set the capital level to cover the full amount of benefits approved as shown in the table below. And then it's just noted the table we see there, and then it says at the very end, although the full cost of the program for fiscal year 2021-22, which is the 2020 grand list, cannot be calculated until after the application process is completed on May 15th, 2021. It is my recommendation that the cap remain at $1 million since the amount of annual benefits is still below the current cap. So that being said, we have the historical data there for the Elderly Tax Relief Program and the recommendation on the Supplementary Tax Relief Plan from Mary Jane. Any discussion regarding those before I put both of those into forms of motions for both of our agenda items?
Do we have any idea who's going down?
Wait, hold on, Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff first. Go ahead, Jeff.
The number of applicants peaked in 2015, and it's been going down, not a lot, but the trend is that it's going down every year. Any idea what the thought process is, or why it's going that way?
Haven't moved the goalposts. People are getting wealthier. That's one. It's been the same $95,000 per couple since the beginning. So if you've had a couple of good years in the market and had $20,000 capital gains, that plus your 2 Social Security, plus your 401k, plus your IRA, put you over the $95,000 per year as a couple, and we're seeing more and more of it, then you get shot out of the program.
And it's strictly based on the income, not the property value.
Correct.
Correct.
It's years, it's income plus years of residence and age.
Right.
But
So
not the
Mike,
property
as
value,
usual,
correct.
want to make kind of an annual proclamation. I absolutely love this program. That's not what it is, and the reason why I give this, as I understand it, most of us taxpayers will chip in a little bit so that some of our elderly population can have a discounted tax bill. I think it's a good program, and it helps the elderly stay in town when they're on a fixed income. But I do keep warning year after year that it doesn't have an asset test. So I just hope some of our elderly population remember to use the honor system. You know, if you live in a $2 million home, you probably don't want to ask the rest of the taxpayers to chip in, even if it's a small amount, to have your taxes be lower. And I think that's the only Achilles heel with the program, is that it could use an asset test.
Okay.
If you live in a $2 million home, less than $95,000 for a couple, or
It's probably
50
not
odd
going
for
far enough.
an individual is not, you're not going to be
Not
living that.
supporting the $2 million
Yeah,
house.
not when you're paying $60,000 in taxes for that $2 million home. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right, Bob.
Yeah.
And one of the
Correct.
things over the years, if there was a criticism of this program at one point, it was consistently that the $95,000 threshold was pretty high, particularly given the median household income in Guilford. Well, right now is somewhere around $108,000. But 15 years ago, it was not at that level. So that 95 was pretty close to the median family income. And Bob, you're right, it has not been indexed for inflation over that time. So that sort of took some of the teeth out of the argument that $95,000 was a little bit high back in the day.
It's also important to remember that the taxes aren't being forgiven, it's just deferred.
Oh, no, this program, they're being
No,
forgiven.
Now, these are forgiven?
No. They're being forgiven.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reduction.
These are forgiven.
And
Nope.
when this first came up, when this is under discussion, I got a phone call from a member of the Board of Finance who is related to me. And I said, you're going to capitalize the difference, aren't you? So you can get it back. And so you get it back when they sell the house, right? So it goes back into the fund and then you just turn over the money. He said, no. I said, what kind of a lefty are you? So he's,
You didn't say that to him,
if there
did
were
you?
ever any change. No. So it was him and Mazza, as a matter of fact, if you want to go even farther, right?
And Blas.
So, you could, yeah, and so you could make the argument that, you could inject that over time to keep the program alive.
Yep.
And then I would actually take it, the sad thing that happens sometimes, I mean, there is an appeal process, but it's a little bit arduous.
Yes.
If somebody sells a vacation home, or if they come across some money and they, if it's a one-off thing and they pop over the limit and they're thrown out of the program and their taxes suddenly go up $1,000 a year, they restart there. They don't go back. So I would say I'd balance one with the other and say, I'll give you a 1 year buy on this, because if your income falls back down again, you should get back in. But it's been a hell of a great program in my view. I agree with Jonathan. It meant that it's a little bit mercenary. It's a little bit genius, because you didn't throw people out of houses so a family of 5 would move in, so that you then had to build resources for them. And it kept the culture, it kept people in their homes, it kept the culture what it was, and it's been fabulous. So I'm very, very pleased. And at the time when this came in, Guilford was giving more in the senior tax freeze relief than all the other towns in Connecticut put together.
Right.
So it's worked out awfully well.
It's been a model. It's been a model for other communities.
Yeah, they all came in.
Okay. What I will do is I will entertain the 2 motions. So for item number 6, setting the interest rate for the Guilford Supplementary Tax Relief Program, I'd entertain a motion to approve that the interest rate of the Guilford Supplementary Tax Relief Program for fiscal year 2021-22 be set at 1.58% per the recommendation of our town's finance director.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Item number 7, set cap for aggregate benefit under section E2 of the Elderly Tax Relief Program. I'll entertain a motion to approve that the aggregate benefit of the Guilford Elderly Tax Relief Program for fiscal year 2021-22 be capped at $1 million per the recommendation of our town's finance director.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I'll abstain.
Oh, I didn't ask for abstentions.
Oh. I should wait.
I should have known. I should have been used to that. Abstentions. We have an abstention. I apologize. Sean. Okay, thank you. Our elderly population and those that need tax relief, thank you. Item number 8, committee reports, building permits. I did notice that it doubled in 1 month. So there's some building going on in town, at least for the single family. When I say doubled in month, that's the single family residence, which is our cover sheet. Okay, if nothing else on committee reports, item number 9, old business. Under old business, I just wanted to mention that the Board of Education, Board of Finance had their joint meeting, second joint meeting this evening prior to our regular meeting. And just a quick update. I'm sure a lot of us, a lot of the community has read the Guilford Courier and other, Board of Ed websites, so this may not be a surprise to many. But the superintendent has proposed a budget increase of 1.49% over last year's budget. I'm definitely not going to go into any detail, but there was lots of discussion over an hour and a half. And there are items that I remember, a couple of us were in the public budget, not necessarily hearing, but comments that the public attended in, I believe it was October, asking for support of increased art staffing at the elementary schools, expanded funding for the swim teams, creation of an equity officer, administrative position, and there were a number of other items that were put in here, but it's a very conservative budget, and does a lot of the things in response to a lot of issues that we as a community are dealing with, including the pandemic, but not so much as it. We were cautioned numerous times that the Board of Education is expecting with this budget, or the superintendent and Board of Education, I should say, are expecting to be able to go back full-time in-person learning in September. Obviously, that's the assumption. If that doesn't happen for any reason, then the game changes, as was told to us. But it's a very responsible budget. It's very conservative. It's the lowest one that's been presented to the Board of Education by the superintendent since his tenure here. So we did have a very, very good discussion, and as always, appreciate the Board of Education and the superintendent's comments and thoughtfulness on this, and everybody who worked on it. We have plenty of time to talk about this. This is just part of our annual routine of going through and understanding everything in these budgets. I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add, but that's the item under old business that I currently have, just reporting on that. And if nothing else under old business, would like to go to new business and just add a couple of items for the public. As all of us know, tomorrow morning and Thursday morning are some of the most exciting meetings that we have as Board of Finance members. Actually, that's not far from the truth for me, and I'll tell you why. We learn a lot about the department budgets and how they're crafted. This is incredibly helpful. The Board of Selectmen invite the Board of Finance members to attend the budget workshops that the departments attend, and tomorrow morning and Thursday morning, I know tomorrow morning is 9 to 12:30. Thursday, I believe, is 8:30 to 12, but it's the entire morning that we listen to the departments present their budgets to the Board of Selectmen, and it is very enlightening. And I sounded sarcastic, but it's very interesting to hear how these are crafted every year and what we are going to learn, and the public's going to learn in about a month or two. So that will be by Zoom. We have our invites, and hopefully most of us will be able to attend. The other item actually I had 3 items. The next, actually one of them got deleted here. So I will add that the Board of Education also has public budget hearings on Monday, January 25th and January 26th at 7:30, and those will also be by Zoom. I was told that you just go to the Board of Ed website and the links to Zoom, and if you want to participate, and YouTube to listen will be there. So kind of a PSA regarding the public budget hearings that the Board of Ed has. And then finally, our next regular meeting is not on our third Monday. It is on Thursday, February 18th. Somewhat of an odd day for us, but it's because of the budget process. And it's going to be our regular meeting, including presentations by the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education on their 2021-2022 fiscal year proposed budget. So those dates, want to make sure that the public was aware of those under new business and that we were all reminded of those. Is there anything else that anyone has under new business? I see Mr. Hoey's finger up and Mary Jane's hand go up, so go ahead.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. just one thing I want to alert you all to. As we go into the budget season, you're probably familiar that the governor's executive powers have been extended through middle part of February. There has been no decision yet relative to what is done with municipal budget making. In December, I reached out to CCM to suggest that they work with the governor's office around some restrictions that communities like Guilford find themselves in relative to conducting in-person voting. I think we have proven that we can safely and effectively hold in-person voting through the evidence of the primary and the presidential election, where nearly 90% of Guilford voters participated with over some 6,400 absentee ballots. The challenge for doing the same with the referendum is our charter. Our charter calls for an annual budget meeting, not less than 7, not more than 14 days before the referendum, which effectively does not give us the ability to do absentee voting, because at that annual budget meeting, the budget can be only reduced. It cannot be increased, but it's perfunctory that it goes to machine ballots. So we can't effectively prepare ballots unless we know what that number is going to be. So that was in mid-December, I reached out to CCM. They're working with the governor's office. It's come to my attention that there is a statute that allows for municipalities to, without doing charter revision, to revise some of the provisions in the charter relative to voting. Town Attorney Barrett is working with some of the state folks to determine exactly what we can do. It may well be that we would move the annual town budget meeting back by several weeks, closer to when the Board of Finance makes their recommendation to the community, which would effectively allow us to prepare and distribute absentee ballots so that we can actually have a referendum. One of the challenges there is that the legislature only extended no excuse absentee balloting for primary and presidential elections. So it would require some measure on the part of the legislature to allow for no excuse absentee ballots. So Jonathan, this is a paean to you, that I firmly think that we have proven we can effectively run in-person votes. And this is an opportunity for us to be able to try to do that in the upcoming budget season. Just wanted to give you a little heads up on what was going on in the background on that, and any of your comments are certainly welcome.
My hat is off to you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. First Selectman, excuse me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great news to hear. To go to your point about successfully holding in-person voting, not to put anyone on the spot, but do we know what the turnout was at the polls? Not absentee, but what the turnout was at the polls?
I've got those numbers in a spreadsheet somewhere, Mike, which are not at my command right now, but we can certainly get those numbers for you. There were literally over 6,300 absentee. Bob, you probably know the numbers better than anyone.
Well, I'm just trying to figure it out. We've got 14,000 odd registered voters. I think
15 over
turnout
15.
Was 90,
yeah.
15%, 90% with turnout. That's 13.5, so 6,300 voted by mail. So it was 7-ish, just under half, just under half voted by absentee. The other half, 6,800 or more voted in person.
My point is that we would love to have that turnout for our budget referendum, but usually we get in the teens to 20. So can we handle it? Heck yeah, we can handle it.
Right.
So listen, and anything we can do to have in-person voting, we did what we had to do last year. And I'd rather not, and I think I speak for the board, we'd rather not do that again this year. We want
I
there
would
to
rather
be a
not,
vote.
for sure. I
We
would
want there to
rather
be a
hear
vote.
from the residents.
Here, here.
We did a
I
great
just
job
want to
doing
add,
it
I may
last
have
year.
voted at an opportune time, but, you know, the only person I came close to, you know, with a mask was the person who checked my ID, and they were on the other side of the table, and it occurred to me that maybe they should have just put 2 tables, and then that would have easily given us a 6 feet distance. But, you know, I kind of voted in an empty gym and was able to maintain social distancing and, you know, wore a mask, and it just seemed like it was as safe as grocery shopping, at least.
Well, thank you for doing that, for giving the update, Matt, and doing what you're doing to try to get that to happen. Appreciate
You got it.
Anything else under new business? Mary Jane, did you have something? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple things. I just wanted to add that all of the documentation for the next 2 days meetings are already on your board pack, so you should
Yeah.
already have that. And secondly, I just wanted to report that our audit was completed by the end of 2020 as required. Bloom Shapiro will be coming to report to you as a board at your March meeting. That was the first meeting that they were able to schedule it for. So you will be getting that information and hearing their report then.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I did notice, looking back at January's meeting last year, that they were in front of us in
Yeah,
January.
they had a conflict for January and February already, so March was as soon as they could come.
Well, yeah, especially when you're holding on, our January, February meetings are on different days because they're not on the Monday, so.
Is the audit available? Is it online yet or hard copy?
I don't have hard copies, but I have a PDF that I can forward to everyone.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else for new business? Okay, anybody public forum? Okay. Thank you, everyone. As always,
See you tomorrow.
would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
See you all in the morning.
Yeah, see you tomorrow morning.
Bye.